Now that the firewall is in place, we're going to cut out the fairings, and we're going to cut these. The fairings for the firewall are going to come from the center section of the wing saddles. And on the top one, we're just going to use the bottom wing saddle. This is going to go on the top. And we're going to just draw some lines out. If you can see, these are the total is 1.5 inches, 7/8 inches from each, from the center line over. So the total is 1 3/4, which is the width of the firewall. And on the top one, we're going to go 1.5 inches in. So now, what I simply need to do is just cut these out. Okay. Now remember, the piece here that where the wing sits in, this is going to be the part that glues on to the fairing, because it's got the angle, or on top of the wing, I mean, because it's got obviously the angle already cut into it. Wouldn't hurt just if you want to mark it on bottom so you know which is which. That is going to go on top of the wing. So now this needs to be trued up a little bit. If you fit it, where this is going to go is just going to go right on back the thing there. If you see, there's a little bit of a gap there. So we just need to true this up. And I found out about the best way to do this is just to do it. Cut a cut perpendicular to the table. Just line your knife up best you can, and then carefully slice it off perpendicular to the table. And you'll find that fits in just about right, because we're going to push it up. Okay. Now, with a big block like that, we're going to simply glue this thing on with CA. Oops. Overdo it. Same thing. Shoot just a little bit of kicker on there. Oops. Line it up. And then squeeze it down and up against the firewall. So it makes a nice good okay. Okay, next up we're going to trim the firewall. And the easiest way to do this is take a fresh sharp blade for one of these knives. And again, I think I've mentioned this before, I get these at Harbor Freight, because you can buy the knives are cheap and the refill blades are real cheap. Buy a bunch of packs of refill blades because you'll go through these. There are other sources as well. These are just box cutters. But take one of the blades, okay, now real simply use the firewall as a guide. Just be real careful. First thing I'm going to do, kind of cut off the top, and again I'm just keeping it flush up against the top of the firewall. Okay, that cuts off the top. Now, put your angles on it, right up next to the firewall, just make sure it lines up. And then using the firewall as a guide, cut off the sides. Like that. Now for the front, just kind of eyeball it, and go back about a little over 1/4 inch, kind of angle it where you're going to come out at the front of the fairing. Make sure you got it straight. And we can actually go back a little more, not too much more. And then, using the blade, off the front piece, there we go. And that's how you do the fairing. And then when you're done, take some E6000 later on and run you a bead of E6000 around there. That'll fill in that gap right there, and it'll make a nice little fairing. Okay, now, remember on the first video on the core prep, I mentioned to keep the other two halves, okay, the other two wing saddles. So I've taken those two and I've glued them together, and we're going to cut out the fairing that's going to go on the bottom of the airplane. This fairing, same width, 1 3/4, only we're going to make it 1 3/4 inches long instead of 1 1/2 inches long, because we have a little bit more room to put a fairing on the bottom, keep it out of the way of the electronics. And same way I did on this one, just take that, cut it out. Remember to use this side, you know, is the part that goes onto the wing, because it's got the airfoil cut into it. Same thing as that. Just do it, square it up, pull it off at the front. Again, if you just cut that front piece down perpendicular, it'll true it up enough. And we're going to just glue it on the same way did before, and we're going to take the knife and trim it up the same way we did the top part. Okay, after the fairings are glued into place, top and bottom, last thing we're going to do on this firewall is we're going to take that centering dowel that we had, and we're sticking out, we used to line up the firewall. I'm going to cut it down to 1.5 inches long, sharpen one of the tips of it so it makes it easier to go in, and then we're going to need to drill out this center hole to push this dowel in, make sure it goes in far enough. And the easiest way I found to do this is not actually to drill it at all, but is to take a 1/8 inch drill bit and heat it up, okay, like so, and then work it in slowly. Try to find that doubler in there. That'll take a little bit of work because there's probably epoxy on that. Just kind of make sure you're going straight. Sooner or later it'll go through, and then make sure to make the hole big enough. Well, just make sure it goes in a little over further than your dowel is. Take it down, test fit your dowel. Probably when it goes into that doubler, you'll know it because it's going to get kind of nice and stiff. Okay, that way you'll know you've got the hole drilled exactly right. So now, to install this thing here, we're going to do the same way we did the other dowels. We're going to glue it with Gorilla Glue. The first time you notice we did that, we didn't use any moisture on the Gorilla Glue. We just let it kind of harden inside that so it didn't expand out so much. This time we're going to use a little bit of water to make it expand out a little bit quicker. And then we're just going to take this Gorilla Glue, fill in the hole, put you a bunch of it in there because it's got to go way down inside there. What you do is just push it in there and squeeze it in that hole. So you get a good amount in there. Take this dowel, spray a little water on it. It'll make that stuff foam up big time. Carefully insert it. Now where it goes in, so you can already see I've got some glue oozing out the back there. You may have to tap it in until it goes flush. And then let that harden. Now since you put water on that glue, it's going to dry pretty quick and foam pretty good. So you're going to have glue coming up out of the foam. So just over the course of the next, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, just take a paper towel and wipe the excess stuff that comes off before it hardens. What the stuff does is it expands inside the foam there, and it'll make that motor mount nice and strong.